Network investigates.
Brahmins, Dalits, Lahanas.
It is sort of like that. We're better than you and you're lower than us.
All part of a so-called caste system, defining the way people are perceived.
It's about familial values, cultural values, spiritual values.
But how much of an impact does caste really have on the lives of British Asians?
Oh, you dirty Chamari, we're going to rip you apart. You know, why should we have to suffer? You know, we're just the same as everybody else.
Now the government says it's looking at whether caste discrimination needs to be tackled and outlawed in the UK. But some Hindu groups say they're worried the law could unfairly target them.
It was very firmly targeted at the Hindu community. We suspect that this is a Hindu-phobic agenda.
And lead to greater divisions in the community than ever before. I'm Vishwa Samani, and this is Asian Network Investigates, the Caste Divide.
Right, I've got to go and get the boys in about 10 minutes.
Jayesh and Ranjit have been married for 13 years and live together in West London. Jayesh is a successful barrister and Ranjit is a full-time mum taking care of their 2 young kids.
Do you want to go or shall I go? Oh, me. Okay then. It's always me.
The couple are both in their 40s. Jayesh is Hindu and Ranjit is from a Sikh background. Her parents were happy for her to marry someone from a different religion, though they did want to know what caste her future husband belonged to.
They'd say, we're Jat and you can't marry out, you have to marry within, and that's what we were told. But I didn't really sort of know too much about who's at the top and who's in the middle and who's at the bottom, or however they've tiered it. I didn't know too much. I was aware of it growing up because it was like, oh no, you can't marry into that caste because they're whatever.
Now as a parent herself, Ranjit's already thinking about how as a mother she would handle things.
They brought home later on a girlfriend that they want to get married to and they named the caste that she's in. It just doesn't mean anything. It's just completely irrelevant. We're not going to say you can't marry her.
As a family, we have never uttered the word caste. We have never spoken about it. So the kids don't know anything about it. And it's not something that we practice or promoted.
When the elders, you know, our parents' generation, they do think of it like that. It is very much, we're better than you and you're lower than us, and actually no one really knows, do they? It's just what they think.
The word caste conjures up an uncomfortable image in a lot of people's minds, one of discrimination and inequality. But there's a lot of debate over what it actually means. For many, caste is linked to Hinduism. For others, it's a cultural issue with a rigid hierarchy, with those born into a higher caste considered superior to those who aren't. Ranjit and Jayesh's friend Dina, who's a Hindu, often pops by to see them before the daily school run. She also has a take on the caste system, and in particular on untouchables, known nowadays as Dalits.
It's something that's been brought back from from India. And I actually don't understand how it's even hit the UK, coming from a Gucci background, farming background. You're at the bottom end, but my grandfather was a farmer, my father's a bus driver, and I'm a financial advisor. Now, where do I fit in? I actually don't know.
Dina remembers learning about the caste system in religious studies classes at school, but never in a Hindu temple.
I've never been told that by any priest. They're not sitting there saying, right, us Brahmins are here, us Gutchis are here.
So where do you think you've got this notion from?
It's actually the mainstream schooling. It's actually the British mainstream schooling, because I sure haven't been brought up with it.
In 2010, a debate began in the House of Lords to try and make caste discrimination illegal. Plans to change the Equality Act to add caste as an aspect of race were drawn up, but the government hasn't yet made it law. It says it's now going to have a full public consultation before deciding what to do. That means discriminating against someone because of which caste they belong to still isn't seen as a specific crime. There's no way of knowing just how big a problem the issue is, because caste isn't included in the census and figures aren't available, though campaigners estimate there are up to 500,000 Dalits in the UK who could be at risk of caste prejudice.
Let me say this, the numbers themselves are hypothetical. And because there is no quantitative research done on the numbers per se, in terms of quantifiability, this is something that I believe is not a necessity in terms of making caste discrimination unlawful. It is actually a red herring.
Satpal Mumin is from Caste Watch UK, a group that offers support to victims of caste prejudice and campaigns to outlaw caste discrimination. You run an organisation which enables victims of caste discrimination to reach out and seek support. Can you give me a sense of how many people have contacted you over the years?
I would say that people who want to speak openly, the numbers are very small. But in a private sphere, people do come out. Maybe once a month you will hear a case.
Do you think that some of these orthodox and outdated views on caste and caste discrimination, aren't they getting filtered away with the older generations? Are younger British-born Asians really thinking along these lines? Because as a British-born Hindu, the caste system is not something that features in my daily life. I live in a very Asian area it's the most Hindu-populated part of Britain, in fact. And it's just not something that features in our lives, as I see it.
Well, that is a splendid thing. That young people, caste is not an element that features in their life. But we're not talking about those people to whom caste is not important. We are talking about those people to whom caste is important.
I'm just on my way to Bedford to meet a couple of people who say they've suffered caste discrimination here in the UK. So I'm quite interested to hear what they have to say, especially because caste discrimination isn't something, as a British Asian, that I've come across, as a British Hindu, that I've come across so far. So I'm quite intrigued really to see what they have to say about their experience of it.
My name is Ram Dariwal. I'm an IT consultant.
Have you always lived in Bedford?
I've lived in Bedford all my life, yeah, born and bred Bedfordian, so yes, very proud of that, in fact. I've grown up here with a multicultural, quite diverse community. Never experienced any sort of caste-based discrimination or comments, or even, I was an Indian, but not necessarily a caste.
But that changed when one day at work, a colleague started asking Ram questions about his background.
She just turned around and asked me, Ram, what caste are you? And that threw me back slightly. I'm thinking, I've never been asked that question, but I had no reservations to say anything different, so I said, I'm a Valmiki. And as soon as I said that, her attitude changed and she started making, oh, you're one of the Untouchables, sort of derogatory comments, and it really threw me back. I didn't really know what to say back to her.
So this was the first time you were hearing something like this?
Yes, first time I've ever experienced things like that, and it just really hurt. And I've got a tattoo on my arm, which is quite personal to me. And she pointed at my tattoo and saying, oh, in the old days, the Untouchables were branded like cattle. And I spoke to my line manager. He was surprised at anything. He never knew anything like that existed. And I said, look, I can't work with her anymore. I know there's nothing the company could do to help me out on this. So the only way to me to avoid her is be moved off the project or something. It took a while to obviously, the changes and do the handover and stuff, but I did get moved off the project.
Ram's not the only one who says he's experienced discrimination because of his caste. 42-year-old Sudesh identifies as Ravidasya, which some people believe to be at the lower end of the so-called caste system.
I finished work, I think about 7 o'clock one day, and picked up my son. Thought I'd go Tesco's to get something to eat. I'd seen somebody and they were just shopping as usual, just in the aisle. And I needed something, so I said, excuse me, which they didn't move. They started calling, bitch, that low-cost, Jamari, dirty bitch. That time I got a bit frightened. I thought, no, this can't be happening, And my son was like, Mummy, what are they saying? And I was like, let's just pay for our shopping and go.
Sudesh fled from the supermarket, but didn't realise she was being followed.
Started walking down the road towards the car. Till then I heard it, hey you, dirty Chamari. I thought, no, this can't, they can't be saying it to me because they don't know who I am. I was just too scared. I just said to her, what's wrong? I'm Indian, you're Indian, what's wrong? Oh, you dirty Chamari, we're going to rip you apart. You don't know where you've come from. At that point, my son started crying, pulling me away. And I thought, no, I've got to walk away. She'd actually called somebody else, I don't know, on the phone. They drove up and come out. And so I had 2 people. And one of them was going to hit me. And I thought they were going to really rip me apart.
When you talk about caste, it's almost impossible to ignore the issue of religion. In the eyes of many, Hinduism, Sikhism and Jainism have all long been associated with the issue.
Caste system was established very early in Hinduism.
It is indeed a surprise and a shock to learn that caste prejudice has come to this country.
The Hindus in this country discriminate against the lower caste Hindus, and that is so appalling.
Those are some of the arguments being made in the House of Lords for caste legislation in Britain. But for Hindu groups across the UK, the idea that a social structure based on superiority has anything to do with their faith is completely unfounded.
Caste has an inherent assumption of hierarchy. So by putting that into law, you're already accepting the existence of a group of people who are saying that they, by birth, are better than everybody else.
Satish Sharma is the chairman of the National Council of Hindu Temples. He rejects the idea that there's a direct link between Hinduism and the caste system.
And nowhere in any of the Hindu scriptures is there justification for a hierarchical organising of society, with one being inferior, one being superior. It's not present at all. In fact, there are many, many places where people are warned against becoming separated and disunited on the basis of superiority and inferiority and discrimination.
Is there potentially a minority group, even if they're very small, of people who feel they are suffering as a result of being called caste names, and should we just disregard what they're saying?
There's no justification. The difficulty that we're facing is that this whole concept of prejudice seems to be bundled up, gift-wrapped, and placed in our lap as a Hindu phenomenon.
Satish believes the debate over introducing a law on caste has seen Hindu groups being branded as guilty of carrying out discrimination.
There has been this assumption that Hindus are casteist. And, I've recently heard what I think is an outrageously prejudicial term, where groups who are not Dalits are now being referred to as caste supremacists. Then I have to say that we're deeply concerned that there is evidence that yes, this is a Hindu-phobic action, and that the agenda behind this is Hindu-phobic.
I've come along to this monthly devotional music event organised by young members of the Lahana community, where Hindus from a range of different backgrounds get together to sing and pray. It's events like this which could, in theory, come under scrutiny if a new caste discrimination law is introduced. Lahanas as a group are considered to be at the higher end of the so-called caste spectrum. Having spoken to victims of caste discrimination, I wanted to know what the term caste meant to three young Lahanas, Raj, Priya and Neil, and so decided to play a game of word association to try and find out. Jay-Z.
Beyonce.
Ariana. Rap.
Okay. Ferrari.
Monaco.
Honda.
Red.
Caste.
India.
Religion.
Outdated.
Okay, cool. Even among this small group of young Lahanas, there's a difference of understanding in what a caste actually is. Do you ever refer to your community as your caste, or do you feel a bit uncomfortable using the word caste?
I don't think I ever have used the word caste. I'm not totally sure which caste we are.
Lahana caste, I think.
That's not a caste though. There's only four.
I suppose there's four castes, yeah.
So I don't know which one. I probably should know which one it is, but I don't know which one it is.
Do you see any difference between caste and community? Do you feel like they're the same thing? They're used interchangeably? Do they mean the same thing to you?
Personally, I don't consider caste, I don't really think about caste as such. I think about communities and different communities and interests and things that bring them together. So I don't necessarily relate to the concept of a caste, but yeah, community definitely.
But do you see any link between being a Lahana and the word caste? Do you think there is some sort of, because it is a by birth social grouping, do Lahanas tend to do the same type of, do they come from this?
Right? Family is a by birth social grouping, but you don't say, because I want to hang out with my parents and my cousins, that's discriminatory. I don't see it that way. I don't think it is.
Would you guys ideally like to marry another Lahana? Is that something that is important?
Think about it that way at all. Yeah, it's not on the. Well, I don't have a list, but if there was a list, it wouldn't be on it.
I would because of my parents' influence, I have to marry someone who's Luana, and today's generation, it's hard to find Luana because it's getting smaller. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. I think familial values, cultural values, spiritual values, that kind of is summed up by our community. But then that's not to say other communities don't have that, don't imbibe that.
Well, this temple's been in existence since 1978, which is a long time, over 30 years.
Here in Southall, West London, worshippers are slowly making their way into the Vishva Hindu Temple, one of the oldest in the capital. Jagadish Gupta is one of those who helps manage it.
There's never been any problem in terms of caste or religion or anything, because there's no issue ever happened in this temple.
So you have people from lots of different backgrounds coming here?
We have a lot of people coming from the various communities, and we always consider everybody equal in terms of religion, in terms of caste. We have never felt any problem in this temple for the last 30 years.
Some Hindus, like Jagdish, say the word caste doesn't accurately reflect the reality of how Indian social groups and temple communities coexist in Britain. And that's a view echoed by others. Campaigners against the caste discrimination legislation say the reason most people talk in terms of a caste system is because they've been taught to. They insist it's based on a lingering colonial view of the Hindu religion as false. Here's Satish Sharma again. And so this idea of untouchability, is that something that exists in Hindu scripture?
No.
So you're saying that that's something that you believe was created by the British?
Yes. If you trace the roots of this particular teaching, you will find that it's a deliberate misinterpretation of a deeper understanding of how human beings organize themselves in a society.
Back at Jayesh and Ranjit's house, the kids have been dropped off to school, and the couple are talking about their memories of caste growing up.
And in the Hindu community, we're very well connected. We don't talk about caste at all. So my grandfather was a barber. How people would define that in terms of defining a particular caste, I don't know. But then my father's a retired GP. I'm a barrister. So I'm not going to have Parliament or judiciary telling me which caste I belong to, because I don't know.
Do you feel like sort of people back home, maybe where you grew up, do talk in terms of caste?
Yes, they do. Especially my sort of parents' generation. They probably feel quite strongly about it. And yeah, I think their children's generation and even younger, they don't really think of it the same way. So I think it's a generational difference.
Interestingly, the frequency of use of the word caste has happened as a result of this caste legislation. That's what our fear is now, that this legislation has erupted all of this all of a sudden out of the blue.
While Jayesh fears enshrining caste in law will have damaging consequences, those who say they faced prejudice believe it's needed. Here's Ram again, who says he was abused at work.
There's more anger that somebody made those sort of comments made me feel, very small in front of other people, because we're professionals there, and my position is quite a senior role in my field within the company. So in that situation, from being a senior person in the room to being belittled like that, it was quite hard to accept,
And would you have taken legal action if that was available to you at the time?
Oh, most definitely, I would have taken it to court and everything for that, and made a police claim against it, so being discriminated.
Did you try and do anything like that?
No, because there's nothing in the law in the UK to do anything, so there's nothing you can do.
For Sudesh, the impact of being abused in the supermarket stayed with her and her son.
My son kept saying, "Mummy, what is a dirty Chamari, Mum? What is that, a swear word?" And I said, "No," but he said, "Mum, you've always told me we're a Hindu, we're Indian." I said, "Yes, you are an Indian, but we are Chamar, this is what we are." I was quite shocked and upset about it. He didn't sleep for days, nor did I. The police didn't know what to do about it. They ain't got a clue what caste was. I tried to explain to him, this is what we are, and they just didn't have a clue. They're not going to do anything. You know, we've got nothing in place, so we stand on no grounds, really. I was quite disgusted, you know, and I thought, well, I've been grown up here and everything, I'm well educated. You know, why should we have to suffer? We're just the same as everybody else.
Having just heard what Sudesh said about her experience of caste discrimination, it surprises me really, and it shocks me because it's completely at odds with what I heard earlier from another member of the Hindu community. They seem so at odds with one another. Because on the one hand, you've got somebody saying that caste discrimination does not exist in this country, and on the other, you've got somebody telling you and describing to you their personal and direct experience of it. Some, though, feel that Hindus need to accept more responsibility for caste discrimination. Satpal Moomin from Caste Watch UK.
So I don't know why the Hindus feel that they are being victimized. I always say the Hindus don't have anything to fear. I really don't understand it. So I think their fears are unfounded unless they've got something to hide.
So could this law potentially fuel further caste discrimination?
No, absolutely not. Just look at the case of racial discrimination. Now, if there's a law against racial discrimination, does it fuel more racism? I think it does not. It simply means that people who are victims of racism have recourse to law so they can find a remedy in law and get protection.
While Satpal insists outlawing caste discrimination isn't about pointing fingers at any one religious group, he believes Hindus shouldn't deny their historical links to the caste system and need to take a proactive stand against it.
They have to see the truth for what it is. You have to call a spade a spade. And if you deny historical evidence, are unable to face reality and unable to face the truth, then you will never be able to resolve this issue.
As parents, Ranjit, Jayesh and Dina know that they may need to broach the topic of caste with their children again at some point down the line.
When you're trying to explain this to your kids, or my kids even, they just laugh. That's the reaction. It's just like, what, really? They just laugh. My son's, 15, and he just laughs.
Are you serious? That's actually there. Really? What does that mean? Why was that there? Why did your grandparents implement that? Or, and they won't get it. They will not get it at all. Our generation and younger, I think it's just going to be wiped out. I don't think it means anything to any of us.
A, we don't want to go as a community 3 steps backwards. B, we don't want to fragment society any further. And C, if you want to eradicate caste, then this is the wrong way of going about it. Let's stop recognising caste full stop because of the problems that it can cause.
Because in society that we're in the way of life we are, and our Hindu values, we're all one. That's what we believe in. We all want to be one and united, right?
There are people who say they suffer caste-based abuse in Britain, yet concerns that a caste law could divide people further are not going unnoticed. What is clear, though, is that passing a caste discrimination law is complex business. Defining caste is difficult, and emotions run high on both sides. But until the government decides what it will do, this long-running debate will continue to go on.
Hear more from Asian Network Investigates
by going online to bbc.co.uk/Asian Network
or on the BBC iPlayer radio app.